Today is a requested video for me to check out. The top 10 2021 fails by Joshscorcher, that Kafka loving guy. Okay, autocorrect is not going to be good. Thanks for in advance.
Welcome to the industry, come and tag along. When you think it can't get worse, we always prove you wrong. We've got hundreds of fails, some harmless, some not. And digging deeper always makes it worse than you thought. Welcome to the industry, sit and grab a snack. Would you like to see big companies get all their data hacked? Wrong region? Well, too bad. Want early access? Well, you're paying $60 for their beta test. Welcome to the industry, here it really rocks. Gambling's legal when you play on Twitch or call it a loot box. Surprises, fun presents are some of its names. Your kids put you in debt and it's not to blame. Welcome to the industry, charming and macabre, where developers are overworked and then they lose their jobs. We've got scalpers and scammers and big exposés and a bunch of Reddit users who scribble Wall Street by buying a bunch of GameStop stocks. Welcome to the industry. Here it's pretty sweet. All the AAA big budget games releasing incomplete, whether software or hardware, they enter the fray, then cancel all their projects, throwing millions away. Online distribution, execution up in smoke. Simultaneously, the companies are bigoted and woke, where the shooters are all looters and the promise features neutered graphic.
Josh is a good singer.
Fake reviewers, shaky rumors were eternal with the journalists who tell you that you're bad. Condemning games they never played and gaming skills so sad. Normal mode too difficult, pay so you can win. Filling all your games with different microtransactions. Could I interest you in everything except for a game? We're selling bits of everything, but not a game. Circuses of services are what this place became. Trying to be everything, just not a game. Pay $1 to roll something, part of the game. A little chance of anything, enjoy the game. Dummies give us money, so we'll always stay the same. Anything and everything comes with your game.
That is one hell of an intro. As a musical, this is not bad. In fact, it's probably one of the best musicals in modern day I've ever seen.
Quite a few people have accused me of bias towards Nintendo in these fails lists. To be fair, I kind of am. I mean, I have specific principles. I don't think that poor creative choices or constantly being behind the times are worse sins than unquestionably malicious actions like predatory monetization or workplace abuse. Sure, Nintendo can be frustrating, but in the same way your boomer grandparents are frustrating. You love them, even though you wish they'd stop being so dang stubborn and move into the modern world already. And once again, this tone deafness in regards to their audience has manifested. So, Ninty, what'd you do this time?
I'm losing money on this deal.
So, as if the limited time shtick isn't bad enough, Nintendo still hasn't learned much in regards to handling the accessibility of their old games. In the middle of October, Nintendo revealed to the public the price of their expansion pack. Inside, they have the Animal Crossing DLC, as well as a package of N64 and Sega Genesis games. Not to mention online multiplayer for them. This seems like a great offer. Of course, they gotta charge extra for their monthly subscription, which is fine if it's only like a $5 to $10 extra. Oh, but who am I kidding? This is modern day Nintendo. Let's bump it up to over twice the price, why don't we?
That is too much.
Seriously, you were this close to restoring everyone's faith in your business decisions, and you had to trip over at the last minute. I mean, don't get me wrong, the offers themselves aren't bad, but paying $50 for a membership and $80 for a family plan is ridiculous. Tangent, but bear with me. When Netflix first came out, piracy of movies and shows dropped significantly. But now that we have Paramount Plus, Disney Plus, Amazon Plus, Hulu, Apple TV, and all these other exclusive platforms that make it super inconvenient to watch interesting shows, piracy jumped right back up. People felt that figuring out uTorrent and risking viruses was less of a hassle than purchasing all these different streaming services. Similar deal here. Nintendo emulators like Dolphin and Project 64 have been out for all this time, letting people conveniently play old games, even in some cases, allowing people to play them in better ways. So when you tag a larger price point onto a much less convenient service, people won't bite. Bottom line, the Switch's emulation doesn't come close to being as quality as the stuff that's already out right now, but it's understandable in the end since it's still just a form of accessibility and legality and morality, but that's a whole nother debate. In conclusion, if you can't put a decent price tag on your service, you're just wasting everyone's time.
Seriously, does Nintendo hate money or something? This keeps up, they might need another Wii U era just to keep them humble.
Dummies give us money, so we'll always stay the same. Man.
Not a bad deal, but really expensive to get. That is just no. It should have been $5 or $10. $5. I'm not a Nintendo guy, but looking at this, oh my gosh.
Anything and everything comes with your game.
Okay, for those who are playing Joshscorcher Fails Bingo, you can mark out the Nintendo one. And the E3 one, because that's where we're going with this.
It isn't surprising that E3 appears pretty often on these fails lists.
Oh.
For every Nintendo claymation, we get an EA Pele. Well, this past E3 was no different. After last year being completely skipped due to complications, to put it super mildly, this year was an opportunity for all the major game companies to show off their stuff. Unfortunately, Sony skipped, Gearbox spent way too much time on the Borderlands movie, and Take-Two spent 40 minutes talking about diversity and inclusion. Yeah, we're focusing on that last one. For those who don't know, Take-Two is the publisher for Rockstar, aka the guys behind Grand Theft Auto and Red Dead Redemption. And like another open world franchise that announced the 6th game of their franchise way too early, people have been clamoring for news on GTA 6. Well, when Take-Two announced they were doing a 40-minute presentation at E3, people were hyped, only for us to get a super long, drawn-out discussion on woke topics.
Whoop-de-doo.
No.
Now, don't get me wrong, especially with some of the failures this year, some that we'll definitely be talking about later on this list, these are important discussions that absolutely need to be had, not only with Take-Two, but the game industry as a whole. However, when you do this with barely any warning and at a show where most people are expecting game news, it leads to some very salty gamers. Some with some pretty offensive rhetoric coming from them after the fact, which is a fail in of itself. Yeah, this was a big fat mess all around. Honestly, I don't know why Take-Two thought this was a good idea. It's not evil or horrible, hence why it's lower, but it's just baffling that they believed E3 was the time and place to talk about this. We are at E3 for game announcements mostly, so
Right.
having a diversity panel is a weird diversion compared to some of the other presentations. This is gonna sound harsh, but either do the things that gamers came there to see, or don't bother showing up at all. But hey, at least the discussion existed, even though it probably did more damage than actually help, and especially since it all went up in flames during the second half of the year. Oh, trust me, we're going to get to that.
Oh.
Though, if my pattern recognition is functioning enough. Calling it now. You're the next one that's gonna have a sexual assault scandal.
Dummies give us money, so we'll always stay the
Oh,
same.
we're gonna have sexual
Anything and
assault
everything comes with your
in number
game.
8.
You know how most of these fails have been targeted towards big budget corporations and companies? Well, strap in, because we're gonna grill the crowd this time.
Yep, as a first, we're talking about community fails. Target? Nintendo. Sure, we at Fiery Joker Productions love to grill Nintendo for their perpetual out-of-touchness, as seen with number 10, but it doesn't excuse their community for the occasional monkeying around and acting like spoiled brats. I don't think I'm being controversial when I say that Metroid Dread is a fantastic game and a much-awaited return to form for one of Nintendo's longest-running franchises. And yet, some people just refuse to be happy. Somehow or another, Dread became the center of two of the most mind-numbing instances of fandom to ever blight the internet. I'll go over the less moronic one first. The attempt to use Dread as some kind of justification for piracy. As of late, Nintendo's Pride Points have been questionable at best and unjustifiable at worst. No arguments there. But you may be wondering, why is Dread, a $60 game, in an era where most games are $60, being held up as a reason to pirate games? I mean, if we want to have a talk about industry standards and the rising prices of games as their budget also rises, and whether or not there might be reasonable things to be done about keeping game prices lower, that's one thing. but flat out advocacy for piracy by a mainstream gaming journalism outlet of a game that hasn't seen a great mainline title in a long time, developed by a small third-party company in Spain who wanted to make it because they love Metroid so much. Yeah, totally sticking it to the man there, pricks.
I don't have time to f around.
And let's not forget there are plenty of worse things to spend your money on, like drugs or lottery tickets or NFTs.
This is mine now.
Anyway, moving on to the other thing.
It'd be one thing if you were expected to think completely outside the box, like with Psycho Mantis and moving your controller ports, but when you fail to grasp something that's been standard operating procedure of a franchise that's been out for 35 years, then you have failed at everything. Metroid has taught players to shoot at walls since the very beginning. Heck, even at the beginning of Metroid Dread. Just because you are so abysmal at following directions, video games, or both, does not make something poorly designed. It just makes you unable to pay attention. You can dress it up in whatever smarty pants technobabble you want, but when you besmirch and slander a game's reputation and then insult the people who enjoy the game, I have no polite words for what you are, but you are certainly not a journalist, especially when you try to say that Samus needs to smile more and try to lift up Other M as an example of better storytelling.
Kotaku.
What?
Especially when you try to say that Samus needs to smile more and try to lift up Other M as an example of better storytelling.
Kotaku. Just don't.
Dummies give us money, so we'll all...
Other M is considered to be a bad game from what I've heard, and they're considering it a better storytelling? Oh my gosh.
always stay the same. Anything and everything comes with
I
your
don't know
game.
what's going on.
Well, at least we have the Stadia. The Stadia's dead.
Okay, no it's not, but it feels like it's slowly getting there. As I said multiple times this year alone, the Stadia just plain sucks. Really poor marketing, a very minuscule library, an abysmal launch, and yet, for some strange reason, it's still alive at the time of this video. However, it's becoming obvious that Google is losing faith in it. What was the first
I don't care about Stadia.
Everything comes with your game.
Alright, what's number 6?
2021 seems like a pretty distinct year for sloppily released games. A good amount of AAA titles this year have certainly seen better days between their hype and release. Though a game being AAA is often talked about, what does it actually mean? Well, it's actually a budget thing. The amount of money being put into it matches a modern day movie's budget. It is not a quality thing. Shocking, I know, but just as there are terrible big budget movies, there are terrible big budget games. With the amount of money being poured into the production, there's no excuse for these games to flub as much as they did. Unless you have a good story behind it like No Man's Sky, no apologies would come after being publicly humiliated.
I could go into detail about each of these games, but our hands are full as it is, so let's do a quick rundown of each of them.
Baldur's Gate 3. Boy, I just love paying $60 to a company to beta test their glitchy as hell product, especially since I still can't play my favorite class. Final Fantasy VII Remake, PC port. Do they even test these things before shipping them out? Holy fudge balls, look at this! Look at this! Out.
Oh yeah, I've heard of a news or two about Final Fantasy VII not being a good PC port release at the time. I think it has better patches now. And also, it has a few sexy mods. Latex mods!
Writers, Anthem but better? Psych! It's another underwhelming looter shooter with balancing so poor, it's basically unplayable. We'll fix it later? A little late for later. Balan Wonderworld, Knight's spiritual successor done wrong. Limited controls, recycled power-ups, and confusing level design, ahoy! Heck, you don't even play as Balan. You know, the character based off of Knights himself. Battlefield 2042, glitches, console crashing, and a lack of basic features for a competitive shooter. Then again, this is EA and Battlefield. What were we expecting? D&D, Dark Alliance. Looks like someone found out how to attach a camera to an object in Maya.
I mean, hey, we should throw our name on this third-person hack and slash game. Does it have anything people love about D&D in it? Besides monster designs, no.
Anthem almost lasted an entire year.
Was finally killed for good this year. Most people already have the story of what happened to Anthem, so I'll just give you a quick rundown.
We now go live to Ari Burnham with a report. So what happened, Ari?
Anthem came out.
What was it like?
Not very good.
That would happen.
EA got blamed.
That would happen.
Expose came out.
What did it say?
Mostly BioWare's fault.
That would happen.
Anthem next announced.
Time to come out.
EA killed it.
Thanks, Ari.
It's pretty sad that we've fallen so low that we are celebrating the absence of bad rather than the presence of good. Standards have fallen so low that things that were standard back then are exceptional now. Well, then again.
Need I bring up Sonic 06 being a rushed game? Sonic 06. And apparently some video game companies never learned, or they just completely forgot that lesson.
People still find a reason to complain about good things, so I guess these games also built a lot of instinct for critique, for better or for worse.
Dumb.
I know I just spent a whole countdown entry talking about the different games that got buggy releases, but I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the big buggy game from 2020 that was released. Cyberpunk 2077. A game that was so buggy that it only got an honorable mention on last year's list. Though to be fair, last year was pretty bad. Well, if you thought that once the game was released, everything would be better, you thought wrong. Things got way worse after the fact. The console version of the game wasn't ready at launch, causing Sony to take it off their store.
I have heard horror stories about Cyberpunk 2077. I mean, I had no interest in that game whatsoever. But Cyberpunk... glitches, unfinished... Sonic 06!
And refund a bunch of people who bought it. When 2021 actually began, Poland's Competition and Consumer Protection Office made inquiries into CD Projekt to see how it was going to turn things around. Well, CD Projekt decided to spend the next few months working their already super exhausted employees just a bit more to fix all the immediate issues. Well, things got worse as hackers decided to access CD's internal network and demanded payment in exchange for not leaking info. And then March came around where CD Projekt finally got their crap together and convinced Poland to back off by giving them a plan of attack for Cyberpunk and a marketing strategy to prevent hype with future games. Too bad that investors had enough with CD Projekt's BS at this point and decided to sue them due to misleading statements made about Cyberpunk's performance on the PS4 and Xbox One. These multiple
it's taken in court
into one large one that Cyberpunk is still dealing with today, or at least at the time of writing this entry. After this, things got better for the Polish creator. They decided to cut back on hours for their employees by delaying the next-gen versions of Cyberpunk to 2022. And they made a statement that they did it due to a recommendation from the development team and was offering therapy for them for free. Though it boggles the belief that it had to get to the point that free therapy was even needed for a game studio to run. Sony did eventually relist Cyberpunk for PS4 with a recommendation to play it on PS4 Pro or PS5. And CD Projekt eventually started negotiations for a settlement with the investor lawsuit. Nowadays, I honestly don't know how Cyberpunk is playing. I hear from people that's much more stable on PC, but the actual game itself isn't much more special than your average open world game. Never mind reaching the heights of juggernauts like Witcher 3 or Breath of the Wild. More like a Fallout 4 situation if anything. But this downward trend just made things worse for everyone, and while CD Projekt says they're doing better with their employees, the fact that it got to this point makes it a fail on its own.
Dummies give us money, so we'll always stay the same.
This is Japanese work shifts levels of bad.
Anything and everything comes with your game.
In spite of everything you've done for them, eventually they will hate you.
Cancel culture, a saying of infamy that's become both laughable and frightening in society today. Yes, there are those who deserve to be called out and punished for any wrongdoings they've done, and for the safety of those around them should never find work again. But then there's the unfortunate lot who get dogged on without giving their side of the story, even if they never meant or did any real harm. Why do I bring this up? Well, now that I got your attention, Scott Cawthon, creator of the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise, announced in June 2021 that he would be retiring from the franchise and turning the reins over to...
Oh my God! I completely forgot about this. Oh. Let's listen to it.
A worthy successor. Half the reason is so that he can better take care of his kids. Aw, that's actually a pretty sweet reason. Until you see the other reason for his retirement. Yep, you guessed it, Scott Cawthon got canceled. Actually, he got worse than canceled. He was harassed, sent death and violence threats, and was doxxed. But why? I mean, just look at all the good he's done. He donated hundreds of thousands to charities, one of them being for a children's hospital. He created one of the most beloved horror game franchises and took any feedback and criticism gracefully. He took FNAF World off the market to finish it and then re-released it for free with updates. He indirectly gave MatPat a ton of money and actually sponsored and supported the fan games of his own series. So why did people feel this man was horrible enough to chase him off the internet?
He donated to Republican candidates.
And then... That's it.
That's literally all he did. Nothing illegal. He just donated to Republican candidates and some Democrat ones too, but shh. And this is worth getting upset about. I mean, he himself is a Republican. It's kinda within his right to do so. And it's not like he was hurting anyone. He was just trying to live his life and support his party. Oh, and he's conservative. Okay, and it's not like it was a hidden fact that he made Christian-themed games or anything. But I mean, of course, why wouldn't they want to single an average guy out just because of his beliefs? After all,
everything is political, Sean.
You see that? You took Life is Strange 2, one of the most obnoxiously on the nose and politically suffocating games of all time, and made it relevant. Hail to the frickin' chief here, folks.
I'm happy to report that Scott stuck to his guns and didn't apologize, and I genuinely hope that retirement is good for him, because, yeah, I think he didn't do anything wrong. He didn't single out any communities or maliciously attack anyone. He just showed his support to people he believed in. Isn't that the point of a political party? Well, I guess not, since trying to live your life is enough to put it in danger. Is he wrong about his political beliefs? Debatable, but can you honestly take a look at everything this man has done and believe he has malicious intent of any kind? No, really, look at everything this man has done and tell me with a straight face that he deserved to have his life and family threatened. At the very worst, his beliefs are merely incorrect. And even then, no matter where you are in the political spectrum, Democrat, Republican, or any third party, no one deserves to have their family and friends threatened over simply being wrong. Period. Full stop. If you had to put a but after that, think about how you're literally trying to justify harassment and coercion into compliance.
People are capable of anything when under pressure. Even more so when they can do it under the mantle of the greater good.
Dummies give us...
I can't. I can't. Political shit or not, Scott Cawthon doesn't seem like a bad guy. What the fuck is wrong with people nowadays? I just...
Money, so will always stay the same. Anything...
finds more and more predatory monetary practices to exploit consumers. With how bad things are getting, it makes day one DLC seem quaint by comparison. One new trend we saw game companies try to monetize is basic quality of life features. Most infamously, Nintendo paywalled fast travel in Skyward Sword HD behind the Zelda and Loftwing amiibo. Because it's not like amiibos have been known to experience shortages or be a target for scalpers.
Nintendo, do you want people to jailbreak their Switch? Because that's how you get people to jailbreak their Switch!
Avengers, which I highlighted in last year's fail list, increased required experience and attempted to sell boosters. They didn't cave into the backlash and remove them, albeit while claiming that they did not see them as pay to win because they do not offer power directly.
Wait a minute! This is a perfect opportunity. Okay, guys, see, I developed this corporate apology translator, alright? Powered by 15 AI. Link in the description.
Do you people not realize how much money we've pissed away on this thing? How were we supposed to know that no one wanted a Destiny clone with the Avengers brand slapped onto it? It's almost like games of this nature tend to be high-profile disasters or something. So if you guys could just shut up while we desperately attempt to nickel and dime you, that'd be great.
Maybe this was a mistake. I preferred the nice one.
Of course, free-to-play games are no exception to being exploitative. I'm usually willing to give these more leeway since they have to make money somehow, but these games tend to exhaust said goodwill right out of the gate. And nowhere this year has this been more apparent than with Halo Infinite, yet another incredibly promising game that is being prematurely gutted by its monetization and progression system. To make a long story short, XP is doled out at a snail's pace, and you have to pay for primary colors. If only there were fair free-to-play games out there that don't nickel and dime your progression. This isn't to say that players can't be scummy themselves. This year we saw Twitch streamers jump on the gambling bandwagon. Specifically, sponsored crypto-based gambling. And what a surprise! Said streamers had the odds manipulated in their favor to entice audiences. And many of said audience members are children. Come to think of it, wasn't there a big scandal a few years back with something similar? I don't know. And of course, it wouldn't be an entry about predatory monetization without mentioning our old friend, loot boxes. Ever since Overwatch
them again.
They've been some of the most infamous and profitable ways to exploit players. With this in mind, game publishers have made efforts to defend loot boxes by calling them surprise mechanics and saying that they never push players to buy them. We even saw some game journalists join in on the half-baked excuses.
Look, companies, corporations, real talk here. We know we can't stop you from doing blatantly predatory monetization. I get that. But for the love of all that is holy, at least try to sound half convincing. Like here, I can get you one right now.
Loot boxes are just another form of randomized mechanics in games. Games are full of randomized mechanics, so loot boxes are perfectly ethical.
I mean, it's still half-baked, but it's better than what you guys have been giving.
With how bad things have gotten over the years, it really makes you wonder how publishers will try to exploit gamers in the future. I mean, what's next? Are we gonna have to pay for bug fixes?
Given how prophetic people on the internet can sometimes be, maybe I should just keep my mouth shut.
Dummies give us money, so we'll...
If we have to pay to get glitches fixed... there's going to be rioting. I just know there's going to be rioting. There's going to be all-out wars, and gamers and developers will be just taken to court, death threats. The stupidity, the greed, it just blows my mind.
Always stay the same. Anything and everything comes with your game.
Number 2, okay.
A little peek behind the curtain. Classifying something as a fail is sometimes a little tricky. Because, yes, on one hand, and for one party, it could be a fail. But for another party, or in Nintendo's case, the industry as a whole, it could be a win. So with that said, GameStop!
Oh yeah, we're talking about the movement that even made Wall Street shift their pants for a few days, the GameStop short squeeze. So what exactly is this movement, and why did it make Wall Street lose $5 billion? Well, if I try to go into the intricacies of the stock market, I would lose viewers faster than Take-Two did at the beginning of their E3 conference. To summarize, Wall Street investors borrowed a bunch of GameStop stock and sold it, hoping it would reduce in value due to GameStop, well, being a dying brand. Well, a subreddit called Wall Street Bets artificially inflated GameStop stock by buying a crap ton of it. This led to a cycle where people kept buying the stock and investors had to buy it back at higher amounts to return the stock they borrowed, causing them to lose money in the process. This entire thing caused GameStop stock to skyrocket to insane amounts and made billionaires lose billions and normal people make millions. Now, this is a good thing or a bad thing depending on your point of view of stocks in general. We aren't really going to argue who is right or wrong here, as this isn't a financial podcast. One thing I will add is how public the anti-consumer ways of stock trading sites were. Absent sites like Robinhood hid GameStop's logo and prevented most users from trading GameStop stocks. They said they were doing it to protect consumer interests, but most people agreed that this only helped corporate consumers in the long run. The funniest thing here is that GameStop had almost nothing to do with this. The guys who spent last year mistreating employees and forcing them to work in poor conditions due to the Karen cough had nothing to gain from this. All they were doing at the time was trying to make their stores into hangouts or whatever they were trying to do. I keep forgetting. Again, whether or not you see this as a fail really depends on your own personal beliefs and knowledge. Personally, this led to a fail on multiple accounts for me. A failure of the stock trading system, leading it to be exploited in this way. A failure of the stock trading apps, leading to a bias in favor of corporations. And a failure of GameStop, of all places, getting unknown hype when the entire organization is gasping for air.
Dummies give us money, so we'll always stay the same. Anything and everything comes with your game.
Oh, honorable mention.
Artifact canceled for good. Oh no. Anyway, PS5 scalping. It still hasn't stopped. Ugh. GTA Trilogy remasters and C&Ding mods. When piracy is the best option to play these games on PC now, there's a problem. Celeste Composers not being paid for 2 years. Still a great game, but yeesh. Xbox Live Gold doubling price. They attempted to, and they would have gotten away with it too if it weren't for you meddling gamers and your stupid standards. EA hacked and stolen data. The fact that people are celebrating over this is really telling. Also, it was stupidly easy to do. Destiny 2 Transmog. Remember when we thought that Bungie moving away from Activision meant no more bad microtransactions? Me too. Stealing the Metabots brand name for a cryptocurrency game. This is probably the first time I've ever hoped something gets a C&D. Hashtag justice for Metabee. Deleting stores. Would have made the list, but Sony relented. For now.
This is number one. How is it going to get worse? How is it going to get worse?
Same. Anything and everything comes with your game.
Okay, it's time for the number one. What could it be?
Saw it coming.
Yeah, from the moment this whole thing started.
I didn't expect Blizzard because I'm not an RPG guy or whatever. But, okay, what's going on here? Why is it number one?
There was no question that it was going to be number one. The other entries on this list wish they were even a fraction this bad. Honestly, I'd say this is less of a fail and more a blatant violation of human rights. This was the obvious number one choice from the start, so without further ado,
here's everything that happened in this case.
Going into 2021, Blizzard was not in a good place. Between disappointing releases, PR nightmares, behind-the-scenes turmoil, and even international political bungling, things were looking bad. But all of that was merely the prelude to their Hindenburg disaster of 2021. In July of this year, Activision Blizzard received a lawsuit from the state of California over some absolutely horrific allegations. To summarize, Blizzard fostered a horrifically sexist workplace culture. This had been going on for years. Among many things, misogyny was condoned to the point of practically being encouraged. Pay disparity was everywhere, and female employees were treated as second-class citizens. Most damningly, management looked the other way at best and actively enabled things at worst. There's also the fact that a former Blizzard employee once kept a hotel suite known as the Cosby Suite, where sexual exploitation by higher-ups flourished.
Cosby?
To be fair,
as in Bill Cosby?
A number of said higher-ups were let go, though Blizzard also decided to do the weirdest flex ever and rename McCree. For context, McCree was named after one of these employees. While I can see why Blizzard would rename him, it comes across as hollow since most people didn't know or care about McCree being named after him.
I recognize the council has made a decision, but given that it's a stupid decision, I've elected to ignore it.
The backlash was so bad that the shareholders sued Activision for withholding the information and causing artificially inflated stocks. J. Allen Brack and Bobby Kotick were quick to respond with apologies so paper thin you'd swear they were written by a robot. J. Allen Brack claimed that he disdains bro culture and that the fight for equality is important. Bobby Kotick claimed that Blizzard would see swift change and long-lasting action, and by that he meant actively trying to stop employees from unionizing. Notice that at no point did either of them actually take any ownership or responsibility for what happened.
The first thing needed for an apology video is to not apologize.
Okay, Blizzard, I'm gonna make this as simple for you as possible. Actions speak louder than words. You can go on as much as you like about diversity and inclusivity, but if you don't actually take the steps to implement those things in a meaningful way, people are gonna see through the BS real fast.
Looking back on it, it's almost like Blizzard's performative activism was nothing more than, well, performative activism. J. Allen Brack later left Blizzard. Said departure was met with a massive outcry of
Stop, don't come back.
As the months went on, Blizzard did everything in their power to make things worse for themselves. At one point, they went so far as to shred evidence.
Blizzard, you do realize that shredding evidence makes you...
Shredding evidence! Oh, wow! They got caught for shredding evidence. Wow. Just wow. Wow.
You look even more suspicious. Or I thought evil corporations were supposed to be smart or something.
If there were such documents, that's not an admission. I would have seen to it they were shredded.
Good idea. A lot of tape and a little patience make all the difference.
To the surprise of absolutely no one, it was later revealed that Bobby Kotick knew about everything that happened and chose to ignore it.
Oh, there's a big surprise!
So that leaves us in the present day. Excitement for Blizzard's new releases has all but vanished, and some people want the company to just straight up burn to the ground. Do you remember what I said in their fails countdown?
If this keeps going, both companies are going down. And Blizzard doesn't deserve that.
Yeah, I take that back. We can't just blame Activision for this anymore. Pretty much everything that happened this year was the fault of Blizzard. Given how long this has been happening, they have no excuse or scapegoat of any kind. I think it's time to amend Blizzard's plaque. Every voice matters, but some matter more than others. Don't get me wrong, the innocent employees should not have to pay the price for this. They deserve to be in a workplace more worthy of their talents and dedication. Gosh dang it, I just want to play Heroes of the Storm again without any guilt! Can't I just enjoy a freaking video game anymore without all this baggage attached to it? The price gouging, the ham-fisted politics both in and out of games, design flaws making a game unplayable. I just want to play a freaking good video game! I just...
Have some angry online posturing surround all games. Activists hollering, don't play this game. Members in the embers of a...
I'd be laughing and smiling at this, but oh my god, after listening to everything, I just can't blame myself.
Wars forever flame, aiming to do anything but play the game. Influential money from Beijing changes your game. A tiny flaw in programming can't play the game. Nervous you deserve this, well we all must share the blame. Caring about everything and anything and everything and anything and everything except for the game.
Oh my gosh. I typically don't watch news or look up shit behind the scenes. I mean, when I look on the phone and look up Google and shit, I scroll a few news. There are some bullshit articles, doomsday stuff that I unfortunately have the discretion of dealing with. I very rarely check out some new news and shit. If anything, the most news that I check out of is pretty much around comic books, a couple video games, new movies, or something. But then we get the controversial video game shit. Scott Cawthon getting bullied because of political shit, even though, political or not, he's still a nice guy. He's still a great guy. He donated to charities and shit. Let's bash him in the head with political shit. I'm like, what? Cyberpunk being an unfinished glitchy mess, not being the only issue. The issue is the workplace is pretty much the level of Japanese workplace. Some Japanese work spaces where they'll just be overworked until they like commit suicide and shit. So bad, it's so bad here they get taken to court and offer free therapy. What? Nintendo offers old games of the past and online membership for $70, $50, which is a ripoff. Microtransactions, it was bad enough already. Activision and Blizzard behind sexual assaults did some pretty shitty things. And they tried to get rid of the evidence. I've heard of companies and people getting exposed and just doing bad shit and stuff. But to erase evidence? Oh my gosh! This top 10 list was painful to go through sometimes. I think I don't really know what else to say. Well, to whoever requested me to do a reaction video of this, I hope this satisfies you. And if you were just as frustrated with all this shit as much as I am, as you can clearly see, then I sure hope you're happy to see me suffer. I can't bring myself to laugh. I'm too tired and dumbfounded by all of this. If you'd like to see, please consider liking and subscribing to my channel. And I hope you have a good day or night. And this is why I don't look up the news and do political shit. Really? What the fuck is the world coming to, especially with gaming?